would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name is Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. I feel like it's been so long. It has been a very, very busy couple of weeks. I appreciate all of you bearing with me, and those of you who've been checking in to find out what's going on. Thank you very much. Today's kind of an interesting show. It's a blend, right? The work from other people doing stuff to the kitchen ended on Friday last week. It looks good. I started the process of painting various things and picking out backsplash tile and doing all that kind of stuff, intermixed again with showing clients houses and actually making an offer on one on Saturday. So it has been super, super busy. So there's going to be some updates on that. There's going to be maybe a little bit more of a chat about lessons learned. In addition to the kitchen stuff, I also moved on and started doing some of the other small tasks that turned into slightly more complicated tasks. So we'll jump in. I chose an interesting title, I think, for today's show. And yeah, believe it or not, I think that what we're going to discuss is valuable information. We'll see. I mean, so often I'm discussing things that come from my perspective, and I understand that, the sample size here is one, me, but hopefully I'm sharing things that are worthwhile for you to at least consider, or maybe carry around with you and use them as sources of warning or at least consideration as you move forward through all the things we talk about relating to the wonderful world of real estate and in achieving your goals in general. So many of these skills that we talk about translate into other parts of life. And the same can be said for other things, right? A lot of other things in your life probably feed well into you achieving your goals, whether they're in real estate or something else. If you'd like to get in contact with me, the best way to do that's through the website. So head on over to therebelbroker.com, click on contact in the menu bar, and from there you can send along any ideas, suggestions, questions, whatever you might have, whatever's eating you, feel free to send it along. While you're there, please do click the red button at the tippy top of the page titled Take the Survey to support the show, because you won't just be supporting the show and you won't just be taking that survey. You'll also be putting your name in the hat to win a $50 Amazon gift card. Now, we've been doing this for a while. We've given away, $350, $400, but we do it at the beginning of each month, and we have not done it for May yet. And my plan is to do this drawing at 5 p.m. Pacific time this Friday. So you've got a few days to head on over there to get involved and potentially win yourself that $50 Amazon gift card. And I'd like to congratulate all those folks who've won in the past months, and good luck to those of you who are yet to win. Finally, if you would like to join the Rebel Underground, the easiest way to do that is to text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. That's text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. If you'd prefer to click a button and do it online, you can check the show notes for today's show, and there'll be a cute little red button there that advises you to click here to join the Rebel Underground. Okay. So today's is really sort of an opportunity. It would be nice if this was a two-way conversation. It'd be great if we could just sit down, enjoy a cup of coffee, and chat over this, because the two topics I'm going to cover today are definitely those kinds of things. And the title really does say it all. One is virtue signaling. And this one occurred to me over the weekend because I was suddenly reminded of something, and it seems to be getting proven true each time. And I'm not, what I'm going to suggest here is that what you take what I'm about to say as perhaps something that should set off a warning light in your head. Don't make it make you stop interacting with this person that we're going to describe here in a minute, but definitely consider it a clue that you may want to tread lightly or get more solid verifications or get more commitments in writing for what you're about to experience with an individual. Because this is one that I've actually learned over the course of quite a few years. And it's had some context, and the reason I say beware of virtue signaling is because it crosses all kinds of lines. Let me give you a couple of examples that sort of jumped into my head for this. But before we get into let me tell you what it is first, I guess, before we get into the examples. This is someone who, when they approach you, seem to find it extremely necessary to explain to you how wonderful they are of a person or how dedicated they are to a thing, and that basically is just waving the flag of their virtue. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with being a virtuous person, but I'll tell you what, the most virtuous people I have ever met don't wear it on their sleeve. They don't oddly bring it into conversation. They don't make this very overt, sort of right in your face series of gestures to sort of just remind you over and over about how virtuous they are. At least that's been my experience. And I want to call it virtue signaling simply because I don't want this to be seen as me saying people from this faith or this group or this organization have this problem, because I don't think it relates to any of those things. I simply think, because I've got too many examples in past history of it not being that. Now, I've got a couple of examples of it absolutely being from the most recent one. The reason why this comes to mind is the most recent one was someone who was one of those people that was absolutely over the top about talking about how involved they were with their church or feeding the homeless or, punctuating every sentence with "be blessed" and things like that, which, to say it like that makes me sound a little bit like a jerk. But they just sort of beat you over the head with it without it relating to anything. Right. So, you ask a question like, what is your timetable for this to happen? When would you like your home to sell? When would you like to buy a home? Those kinds of things. What's the date that has to happen by? And instead of simply telling you the date, there is a 15-minute conversation about all the wonderful philanthropic or faith-related or whatever it is, the things in their life that they are virtue signaling about, just gets totally paraded out for you. Now, why am I even bringing this up? I had another experience over the weekend where someone of that type who had all up and I've had this happen before. For those of you who've been listening to the show for a long time, I'm almost sure I brought this up when I discussed the worst buyers I have ever had in memory. Now, who knows? Maybe I had worse buyers way back in the late 1980s or the early 1990s, and I've mentally blocked it out. I had a few bad ones that I can recall from that time frame. But the ones that stand out, the ones that I will remember as the ones who lied, didn't follow through on their word, didn't live up to their contractual obligations and expected the other party to just be okay with that kind of stuff. These are folks who, in addition to having these problems, also were extreme virtue signaling type folks. And again, I'm not suggesting that you immediately dismiss those folks. I'm simply saying that I think that it is worth your time to become more cautious, to become more aware of what is and isn't getting done. So let me give you a couple of examples. Now, the first one goes back, I think, to probably 2013, 2014. And I was selling a home in San Martin. It was a great little house. I would love to live there. Outside of my price range, it probably fell into the category of what a lot of people call a gentleman's estate. Beautiful. It was on 5 acres in a community called San Martin here, which is very much a horse community where folks like to board and breed horses. And we got into contract with some folks, and this was their thing. I mean, within 30 seconds of shaking hands to meet them at the property to show it to them, there was, it was the stuff, the virtual signaling stuff punctuated every sentence. Every sentence became a prayer or that kind of a thing. And again, I have nothing against folks who very strongly believe in their faith, but the ones that really kind of put it out there always feel like they're trying to convince me of something, right? And again, it doesn't even have to necessarily do with faith. I've seen folks who were complete atheists but very much need to beat me over the head with how much money they give to charity or how much charitable work that they do, that kind of stuff. And again, I feel like a jerk for saying it. I feel like a jerk saying it, but just the folks that beat you up with it. And then there's the folks who have this legitimacy, who do all of that stuff, but don't feel the need to just push it all on you, right? I don't know why I'm so defensive. I'm sure I'm going to offend somebody. Every time I come up with anything like this, I get the offended person reaching out. But everything was, fine, I suppose. But we get into contract, and then nothing gets signed off, and I start discovering lies about various things relating to how their purchase was going to work and what the original plan was, and discover that I'll have everything set for them to sign for releasing of contingencies. They say they'll release contingencies. It doesn't happen. And in fact, in this particular case, it got so bad that it offended my seller so much that he finally said and my seller was a peach of a guy. I mean, if I had to come up with a list of my top 4 favorite clients, this guy would easily be on that list. In fact, if I was to come up with my top 2 list, he'd be on it, and I'd probably have a hard time deciding who number 1 was. Just a really great guy. I learned a lot from him. He was. We were working together during a time of my life when I was going through some tough times. It was when I was getting divorced, and he was going through a tough time himself. He was sort of re-entering life after having lost his wife to cancer. So we built, I thought, a strong relationship. But anyway, I'm digressing. It even got to the point where he did not want them to get the house. And it was one of those deals where they literally were trying to push escrow back, and they kept pushing escrow back again and again and again. And we just kept letting them do it, taking them at their word, and having a contingency of that push date be you need to sign off on all contingencies. And they never did. They never signed off on anything, and just kept saying, well, if we sign off on contingencies, we'd lose our money if we didn't go through with the deal. Yes, that's the point of signing off contingencies. It's for you to commit to the deal. So we were literally 6 days away from the very final date that we were willing to tolerate the delays. And at this point, I think a month and a half of delays had been put through. And they simply were not going to release contingencies. And we just said, release the contingencies or we quit. And they didn't think we were really going to do it. And we did. So we ended up canceling the deal. And within 24 hours, we had another offer going for more money that was going to close in 10 days. So we actually ended up, from the date that they had last contractually agreed to close, we closed, I think, 3 days later than that, in record time with the second client. So what's my point? Well, in this case, the alarm bells did go off with this person a little bit, but I want, you give people the benefit of the doubt. But I constantly was cultivating a backup offer based on that. And that may sound like a petty thing, but after over 25 years of doing this, when I think back to the times I was lied to the most, when I was most deceived, where folks actually just straight up told lies or refused to follow through on their commitments or their promises, it was the universal thing, the one common thread among all of that is these folks that talked about what great people they were at every opportunity. And that doesn't, I don't also want to imply that this is something that's unique to buyers and sellers. I meet plenty of real estate agents. In fact, this is one of the things I wanted to share with you, because obviously from my side, as a real estate person, I tend to see more the buyer and seller angle of this with people that I deal with, to the point now where I'm very attuned to it. And I say to myself, this is what I expect to happen from this relationship, or this is something I'm going to watch out for. And the reason why I even got reminded of this was about a month ago, one of the folks that I was talking to in relation to my remodeling was interested in talking to me about listing their home for sale. And as soon as the conversation turned to that, then the conversations that moved forward. And what's interesting is that the virtue signaling did not happen until the conversation went to this. Talked about how she thought her husband would really like my approach, my honest way of dealing with people, because we had quite a few conversations about the remodeling remodeling project. And I was very matter of fact, and she had asked a couple of questions that were general real estate things, and I'd given her honest answers. And she said, "Great, that's fantastic. Why don't you come over and do a presentation to my husband and I, or come in and give us a walkthrough, do a staging visit, and sort of let us know what we need to do to get our home the most money possible." So I did, and my alarm bells were already ringing, because all through this conversation, it was what we've talked about. It was all of this. It was just heavy. It was just a heavy barrage of it. And so I go to the little meeting with them, and I am not the guy who goes into the listing appointment and says, I need a signature right now on this listing. I only want to list with people who want to list with me. So what I usually do is go through all the data. I leave them the data, and I suggest, now listen, if I'm the first real estate agent you've talked to, I suggest you talk to 2 or 3 more, but I need you to make one promise, and that is, don't sign immediately with the last agent you talk to, because they are going to absolutely pressure you to sign. The tactics, the chapter on listing appointments says, get a signature before you leave. And if you have trouble getting a signature, ask if they plan on talking to any other agents. And if they say no, say, well, then let's just go ahead and do it. Let's get started today so that we don't lose any time. What I need you to do in any case where you're talking to a bunch of different agents, talk to the 3 or 4 agents that you're interested in. If none of them float your boat, start over. If none of us, and this is the conversation I had with her, if none of us feel right to you, if none of the folks you talk to feel right, talk to 3 or 4 more, because this is a big decision. You need to make sure you're comfortable with it. And I said, but in the meantime, what I'm also going to do is leave you my listing agreement. It's all ready to go. It has the numbers we talked about on it. And as soon as you sign it, I start going to work. And even if your home isn't going to get put on the market in a month, I start getting things ready to go. I get marketing in place. I like to do things timed so that the minute that thing hits the multiple listing service, everything's ready to go. Professional quality photos, online presence, all that kind of wonderful stuff. Okay. So again, all through that experience, walking through the house, giving her suggestions of what needs to change, what things should go into storage, all that wonderful stuff. They're all, you know what, we've decided we absolutely want to go with you. But just, we'll give you a call back. We'd rather sign when we get closer to the date. And I said, okay, perfectly reasonable. I get it. Just make sure that when we sign, you're giving me at least 2 weeks lead time before you actually want the home to go on the market. And I said, with the list of things you have to do, you'll be busy for at least the next month. Great. Everything's fine. And I walked out, and I guess I understand I'm not verbalizing all of the heavy-handed virtue stuff she was putting out, but it was, you couldn't go more than 3 or 4 sentences without something, either talking about, you'd talk about how their family lives in Arizona, and then suddenly there would be something about a charitable thing they did in Arizona or to help someone here or there, and that person was from Arizona, and sometimes it would come out of the blue and not be anything. So it wasn't like stuff that casually got hit on in the course of these conversations. Again, it was something you felt like you were being beaten over the head with. And I finished that off. I did a follow-up visit to all the competing homes that were listed in their area. I took a few photos, threw together a quick note, letting them know what the competition was, sent that off, and assumed in my head that there was no way they were ever going to list with me. My past experience, and even though she was like, we're absolutely ready to go, she says, she even said, even though you don't have the document signed, feel free to go ahead and start doing whatever it is you need to do to get the home sold, because we're absolutely going to sign with you. You're the guy we're going to use. So called, got a week later, I called, got voicemail just to let her know I'm checking in. How are things going? And that's the rhythm. About once every week. We get 3 weeks in with me leaving messages and not getting calls back. And sure enough, I'm now convinced that what I believed was going to happen has happened, and she won't be listing the home with me, which is fine. That's not a problem. And I, if someone had bothered to call me first and say, you know what, we've decided to go another direction, we really appreciate your time, but thanks. But I happened to bump into her at the Home Depot while I was buying a light switch over the weekend, a new light switch for my fabulous new ceiling fan, which we'll be talking about in a minute. And she got all flustered and was having trouble talking. And she says, oh, well, yeah, we ended up going with someone else. We ended up going with a real estate agent from our church, and that's fine. Interestingly enough, I get a call 2 days later from the person that they did list with. And she had gotten a hold of the data paperwork that I had left for her. And it had my name on it. Any piece of paper I give to a client's got a banner on the top of it that has my name and my phone number, my company, and all that stuff, so they can contact me. And apparently this person had given it to her and reached out to me because she wanted to get my opinion on the valuation that she had come up with. She said, I really like your data analysis. Can you give me some feedback on what you think it'll be worth when we list it? Couldn't believe it. Kind of a mind blower. And I asked her how she knew them. And she said she was their daughter-in-law. So clearly, even from the very beginning, I don't know. Maybe I'm using you guys too much as my opportunity to vent. But it was just one of those things where I thought, God, you could have been completely honest with me. You could have told me exactly what the situation is. And said, hey, I'm probably going to list with someone else. Would you still be willing to do a property valuation for me? And I probably would have said, yeah. I know that makes me kind of dumb, but you never know what comes from stuff. And it's always good to get out there and see what things are going to go on the market. At the very least, I would be knowledgeable of the fact that a listing is going to come up before it comes up, and I could potentially get something for my clients. So, in my business, I like to think that all contact can be made into good contact, even when you're not going to get a contract or a listing out of it. But there was clearly no intent ever to list with anyone other than her daughter-in-law. Of course she's going to list with her daughter-in-law. Come on, give me a break. So it's just that I'm not we've had chats before where about my general feeling about dishonesty, the casual dishonesty we talked about relating to real estate agents before, and just how that stuff works. And I'm just going to encourage you in anything you do, to be cautious of those folks who just so heavy-handedly need to remind you of what great and giving people they are. The most great and giving people I have ever met have never needed to tell me that they were. They've always managed to demonstrate that through their actions. And I think that works in pretty much every aspect of life. I don't think it's just a real estate thing, but I will say that I have seen a pretty strong correlation between the folks who do that, who do feel the need to beat you over the head, and sort of a willingness to not be honest and to not stick to their word. And it's always struck me as odd, particularly the folks who do this from a religious standpoint, when so much of that philosophy of living is wrapped up in honesty and in dealing squarely with other people and in living up to your word. So, all right, folks, we're going to take a quick break right here. I know I've taken this one right out into the crazy town zone here. Apologies for that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the other interesting thing that happened over the weekend. Maybe a little insight into the work I got done, plus my near-death experience. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I really do appreciate all of you going to the trouble of listening to my show. I'm always, I almost said I feel blessed. I'm not going to do that. What I am going to say is I feel very honored that you're willing to spend your time with me. And I hope this is valuable for you. I hope the last 25 minutes of me meandering through the windmills of my mind relating to trying to spot folks who may not deal with you as honestly and openly as you would like helps in some way. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I just draw that out of people who like to really convince me of how wonderful they are. Maybe I just draw out their dishonest side. Or maybe they're trying to be kind. Maybe what they're really doing is trying to say what they think I want to hear because they hate me so much, but they still want to be virtuous by not telling me how much they hate me, and they want to just say things they think I want to hear. Maybe that's it. It's a possibility. But either way, I'm not sure it changes how I should react to it. Okay, so the next thing is work that got done since the last time we talked. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we talked Wednesday last week. I posted some more photos up on Pinterest, and I had a couple of you reach out to me but because of Pinterest. Thank you for that. And one of you even mentioned how hard it was for you to find a link to my Pinterest page on my podcast page. So I'm going to go take another look at that and see if I can make that a little bit more obvious. Apologies to those of you who look for that stuff and can never find it. So there's I created a separate album, I guess they call it, or whatever, for just the stuff I'm working on, and there's plenty more to go. I don't have any photos up of some of the stuff I did over just this last weekend, but I guess I can do that. I'm such an idiot. I should be taking more photos of this process. Now, as I mentioned before, there were lots of little things, little touches that I wanted to make because I've got a weird thing. I like to try to make one thing in each room say, oh, that's kind of neat, right? And I've also mentioned I have this gigantic great room that on one wall is all windows, and most of the living happens on the second floor of my home. So the entry is down on the first floor, and in the entry hall, the windows go straight up for 2 floors. And those windows on the upper part of that all are into this great room. And there was this rinky-dink little ceiling fan that looked like it was from about 1975, which is probably when it was from, that just didn't really move much air. It was the standard 52-inch or 50-inch or whatever it is, the size you'd put in a small room. And the scale of it just has always annoyed me for the great room. So I went out and got myself a brand spanking new 62-inch or more. I can't remember. It might be more than 62 inches, but big enough for the great room. Something where the scale felt right. It could move enough air to really keep that space more comfortable. LED light, a little bit more modern looking, brushed nickel. Very pretty. I'll post a photo of it. And originally, I was going to have my brother-in-law or one of his little contractor minions do that kind of work. Well, last time we spoke, I mentioned that it looked like we'd probably be able to stay on schedule and things would be good. That isn't happening as much as I would like. So now, instead of me thinking I'm going to be delegating some of these tasks to him and some of his folks, I'm doing them myself. And this weekend, I got a bug in my bustle about the ceiling fan and decided, you know what? I'm going to go get myself a ceiling fan and I'm going to install it. I had also started doing some painting. So there's been painting of some shelves, and I've decided I hate painting the insides of shelves or in cabinets for the kitchen. And I may not do it for everyone. Maybe I'll send photos to you guys and see what you think. There was one I have to do. So that kind of made it a non-starter anyway. But anyway, so and this is a super, you'll see in the photo, I will put a photo up on Pinterest of the fan, but it's way up there. From floor to ceiling, I'm guessing it's 20 feet at the peak, which is where the fan is in terms of its install to the ceiling. And I thought, you know what? I've got a long enough ladder. My knee has healed up enough. This should be no problem. Got a little help from one of my sons. Sure enough, got it all swapped out, got the wiring worked out, and learned the lesson that you never put a modern ceiling fan on a dimmer switch. Good to know, right? Sadly, I didn't know it before I installed it, which is why I was back at Home Depot going to buy a non-dimmer switch, light switch, to accommodate my new fan. Once it was all done, everything was obviously working. I decided to go up my ladder to the ceiling one more time to just wrap everything up, to take the extra wiring and wrap it up into the cone at the top, secure the cone and screw it down, make everything pretty, and then I'm done. So I climb up to my ladder, and I am eye level nearly with the tippy top. And I'm standing still, but I realize I'm moving. And I look straight ahead, and you know how those extendable ladders that are just straight, right? They're not an A-frame ladder, it's just a straight ladder. It's leaning up against this gigantic beam that the fan is actually mounted to. God, you know, I need to be a better storyteller for this one. So I'm casually screwing things in, tightening bolts, and I realize I'm moving, and I look straight forward, which means I'm now looking straight at the beam, and I realize that where the two vertical struts of the ladder were resting up against that beam at its top are sliding, and I can see the marks left on the painted wood where it's sliding down. And it doesn't register immediately that my ladder is sliding down, and once it hits the bottom of that beam, it's going to fall. I suppose there was a split second where I didn't get it, because in the following second, I realized the big screen TV is right there, which is just close enough that the ladder will smack right into it. The ladder will also impact part of the fan, and at least cause it to hit me, because it'll force the fins to spin, and the spin of the fin will hit me on the left side. I realized that to my right next to the ladder is the remains of the old fan, where the 3-foot-long extension pole is still sticking straight up to impale my silly fat self if I fall on it. And on the other side is the toolbox and hammers and saws and screws. And at some moment I realize that I'm hosed. So I lean back as far as I can, like Buster Keaton, thinking I'm gonna be able, when it comes off the beam, be able to do some magical circus act where I'll be able to balance it. And it comes to a stop, and I swear I'm glad I didn't, but I wish I had been able to take a photo of its position. The very bottom of the feet at the top were resting, I swear it couldn't have been more than 1/8 of an inch from the bottom of the beam. One more 1/8 of an inch and I would be falling. I scream for my oldest son while I'm leaning backwards, trying to not kill myself. He comes out and I'm all, just secure the bottom, just make sure the bottom doesn't move, make sure the bottom doesn't move so I can climb down. It is so close to the edge, I'm afraid that just the movement from me climbing down will cause it to come off of the beam. And my son is holding on to it. He's pulling on it. He's trying to make sure, because there's no way he's going to get my just under 300-pound bulbous body get that little ladder with my body on it slid further up. It's not going to happen. So he's just trying to hold it right where it is. I managed to get down, and he goes, "Dad, look." What had stopped it was the couch behind me, which had started to slide towards the wall under the pressure from the ladder. So that was my near-death experience over the weekend. In fact, it's the way I closed things out, more or less. I said, okay, clearly one dodging of death event equals you're done for the day. It's time to relax and not do that. So I guess, as I always like to try to do, I want to make this relevant for you. Don't do that. Or just make sure the angle on your ladder is not going to result in it sliding back from its position, particularly if you're putting it on a surface that may be a little bit more slick. However, the good news is the fan is in, it works, and it's beautiful. So there's that going for it. Some other things that I've done, as I mentioned, there were a couple of cabinets that demanded the insides be painted. I'm going to suggest that for all cabinets on the inside, get denatured alcohol, rub everything down with denatured alcohol, let it dry for about 30 minutes. It should dry much faster than that, but just to make sure. Absolutely use a primer. And once you've got that primer on there, they'll go with the paint color that you plan on using. In reading up on this and talking to people, the number one thing people complain about is flaking paint. Well, that's only going to happen if you don't use primer. If you use primer and also the other thing you might want to do is use the alcohol, then do a very light sanding of the surface, particularly if it's super smooth, a very light sanding of the surface you're going to paint. Then use the primer. I ended up going with 2 coats of primer just because I'm a little bit anal retentive when it comes to that stuff. And then I'm going to do the final coat of white paint. Frankly, I've done a good enough coat with the primer that it looks great. But I would strongly suggest you do that. The bottom line is the extra 10 minutes you'll spend doing the alcohol, the denatured alcohol rub down, and the sanding, and then that primer is going to be time well worth it. You're not going to, and if this is something you're keeping forever, if this is something where you're planning on living in it, you want that stuff to not flake. You want that stuff to last. Go through these steps and you're getting much better results. What else did I do? Started looking at ways to install my backsplash. I was going to have my contractor do that. It's looking like I'm going to do that now. And I've opted to backsplash. If you've seen the photos on Pinterest, pretty much all of the area in the photograph that's against the outer wall, not the inside wall, but then all the way up the window. So the window that's over the sink, it'll be all the way up to the ceiling on that part. I think that'll be a good look. What else? Oh, and finally, I know we were talking about this last time where I was kind of up in the air about whether or not I was going to upgrade the dishwasher and the oven. I've pretty much settled on not doing that. Now that I've got everything installed and I'm seeing them sitting there, I think they look pretty good. I actually think the contrast is nice in terms of the white with the black. I do have the silver cooktop, and I will have the silver fridge, or the stainless steel fridge and stainless steel cooktop. But I think that having those two, the dishwasher and the oven, actually still keeps it all looking good and keeps it looking consistent. So I'd love to hear feedback from you all. I'm basically saving about $3,000 by doing this. And I just honestly don't think that the difference in the kitchen would be enough that I would suddenly get more than $3,000 added to this potential sales price. Some of you who talk to me on a regular basis, I'm about 99% sure you're going to say, don't. But I'd love to hear some feedback from those of you who are out there in the world, maybe some of you who do flips, who've tried different things, and see if you've actually noticed a difference in how that affects the sales price of your properties. All right, folks, that's it. I promise that the next few shows will actually be on data. There's a couple of articles I've come across over the last few days that I think will be very interesting to review. One of them is going to be a very interesting one for folks who are looking for the best places to invest. It's another one of those stories that tells us where the best places in terms of return on investment have been over the last year. And those are always good shows. It's great to see where those areas are pointing things out. And there might be a couple of surprises. There was a couple of articles that I thought were very interesting in terms of points that they're making that might surprise you. One of them very much so. So stay tuned. Check out the rest of the shows coming out this week. I wouldn't want you to miss any of it. All right, folks. Thanks again for listening. I absolutely appreciate you taking the time to listen to all the things I have to say about real estate and hope that it's very helpful. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to y'all next time.